Hi friends, as promised, I'm back on here with a how to make the Danessa Lightwork 6 Freedom palette a little easier to use for beginners. Or maybe you don't consider yourself a beginner, but don't have the confidence to dive into Lightwork 6 head on, right? There are a lot going on in here in terms of finishes, of textures, of colors. I already have a review video up showing the swatches, and I think I did 6 looks as well. And I always have to mention that this was a gift from a subscriber, and every time I see it, I just feel the grateful levels surging within me. I always have to share that because, again, I realize that it is an expensive palette, and if you live in a region where, especially if like Australia or something, it's super expensive for you, whatever the case might be, but you are drawn to this palette and you are still deciding if it's worth it for you to purchase it. There are a few sales coming up, most notably the Sephora event that starts on November 1st for Rouge members, November 5th for VIB and Beauty Insider. Only 20% at most if you're Rouge, 15% for VIB, 10% for Insider. The Beautylish event is over for their fall gift card event, where every $100 you spend, you receive $20 in gift card money. So maybe you already purchased the Lightwork 6 palette with some dollars off there. I'm sure Danessa will run a sale on her site, but don't know if she'll put Lightwork 6 on sale, as this is her most recent release and her baby is a possibility because Danessa is generous. So maybe she'll surprise us and say 20 to 30% off the palette. I don't know. That is just speculation. However, if you have this palette, I'm going to show you what I think are the easiest ways to approach it through in regards to making it a little more beginner friendly, where you don't have to apply all these shades at once. And if you don't have it, sure, you can consider this a case to consider purchasing it. More so if you're already leaning towards purchasing it, but you need to get pushed over the edge because you're like, I don't know if it's going to be that practical, Alicia, because there's a lot going on, and maybe you already have Defining Neutrals, maybe you already have Blooming Romance, or maybe you have our other Lightwork palettes and you're just fine with that. So those are the scenarios that I hope this video will address. And let's start off with what I think is one of the more important elements to consider when it comes to the Lightwork 6 palette. And I think it's important to realize that to have the right tools is going to cover that gap between the just ethereal experience that this palette possesses and having that experience plop on your lid. Because no matter what, if you don't have the right tool to pick up these textures, it doesn't matter how innovative, life-changing the palette is, right? We gotta get these shadows on our eyeballs. And with that said, here are a few recommendations that I have in my collection that you might have similar brushes in terms of the bristle type and density. This is an ESUM brush. It's an older brush, so I don't think they have this one anymore. I can double check, and I will make that note down below in the description box. It is the ESUM W23, and this is made out of Weasel hair, and Weasel hair is quite versatile in that you can use it with powder and cream like products, and it's stiff, which means it's going to have great pickup with that wiggling back and forth action, and great lay down as well across the lid. Another brush here, also from ESUM, but their newer construction or the newer addition to their brush line. You can see the difference in the color of the handle, where the new brushes have this charcoal handle, and this is all synthetic with this slant. It's almost like a smaller BK Beauty and Angie Hot and Flashy concealer brush, but I think this is great for hard to pick up textures because of the construction. The different tier length bristles makes it really nice to pick up those tougher textures, which for Danessa's palette, a lot of them are creamy. So to have the different lengths here, I think advantageous to pick up a texture such as that. This one is from Bobo and Yoshiki's collab from the Kyoto collection. This is all goat hair, I believe, Tuckahoe goat hair, but similar to what I just showed from the ESUM brush, that it has a slant here. You can see that the Bobo and Yoshiki brush is much denser, but but it has that fingertip slant that I think fabulous for textures found in Lightwork 6. And this is going to be studly for getting a lot of product here on the brush and then placing it all across here on the lid and just be one and done. And the tips are smooth enough and have enough movement, in my opinion, to move that color through the crease. Maybe a little too big for under the lash line, but I think you can graze under there nicely where it's not a ton of product and it won't appear overly hazy, in my opinion. You can see for yourself because I will use this brush for sure in the demonstration or a few of the demonstrations. This is a Rephr synthetic brush. I'm not entirely sure if they released this or plan to, but this shape is pretty common, I think, in a lot of not only Fude collections but other brushes that are not necessarily made in Japan, where you have this flat side round tip construction but it's all synthetic, right? A lot more flexible from what we've seen thus far, but I think it has still adequate pickup. But what it capitalizes on is the blending, right? So perhaps this is more of a medium coverage brush choice if you want it more of a wash of laydown versus more opacity on the lid. And I have Sonia's Fusion brush here, specifically her Fusion Builder. Is this the Fusion? Yes, it is. You have a mixture of synthetic and natural hairs, and this is more precise in terms of that pickup that I think will be fantastic for lid precision, especially if you wanted to go a little bit of layering that you very much can do with this palette, because Danessa has those finishes where they're a little more translucent and it changes the effect and reflectivity of many of the other multi-chromes in here. And which one do I have left? Well, I have two left actually. Another one from Rephr. This is their concealer brush, which I absolutely love for concealer. I would argue this brush fine for those larger lid owners, if you will, where they're gonna pick up a ton of product and that's just gonna be it, right? If you're just like one and done, swipe and go, this brush will do exactly that. And there are more brushes like I had just showed from the ESUM collection that take on a similar shape, but that's going to be more suitable for smaller eye sizes, smaller lid spaces, and this for larger lid spaces. But you see the common theme here in terms of the brush design, that slant, which I think impeccable for pickup. And lastly, the Bobo and Tuckahoe collab from her Nebulae collection. I believe this is Weasel hair, so similar to the ESUM brush. And you can see the flat round shape in each. It looks like Bobo's brush is a little thicker. It has nice stiffness, but a flexible tip here. So you could imagine great pickup on the wiggle and then nice swirl blend through the crease, and also here under the lash line. Now that we went over my choices for tools, I think it's time for you to come in a little closer to start slapping on these shadows. Starting off with applying your favorite primer. If you don't use primer, fine. Also, I would consider, and I guess I was gonna move into this when speaking about one of the ways you can kind of ground down the shades found in Lightwork 6, is to use not necessarily one of Danessa's products, but I think of her product because it is formulated to be long lasting and waterproof and all that. And that is her Color Fix series, where she would use one of her nude shades that she has several of, apply that on the entire lid, and the formula itself is meant to be long lasting and holds on to color well for a while, right? Or you could go in with one of her defining neutrals or one of her groundwork palettes, I should say, more specifically grounding neutrals, where not necessarily the velvet pomade, but perhaps the fixed powder, something fixed powder that has the Upsilite technology that's found in a lot of her complexion products that is supposed to combat excess oil and sweat. And I think having that under one of the textures here found in Lightwork 6 will help with longevity. But instead of relying on something like defining neutrals, I just wanted to show you, if you wanted to eliminate as many steps as possible and make this as simple as possible, is just to pick one of her shades. shades. Now, from the 9 different finishes that she has in Lightwork 6, the easiest and most straightforward will probably be her satin soft mattes here. They don't have any shine or shifts or whatnot. They do have sheen and are incredibly easy to blend and can leave behind a beautiful wash of color across the lid and through the crease where it appears diffused, and that probably will be the simplest formula to use on the eyes. But if you wanted to, you're like, Alicia, this cost me a lot of money, I want to use the fun shades. If you wanted to use something like this multi-chrome here, that is just stunning, and I think one of the more neutral leaning multi-chromes in the palette, you could just slap this on the entire lid, because look how smooth the texture is when blended. This is how it will appear through your crease, and let me demonstrate just that. And I'll use, let's see here, I'll use my my Bobo brush, which I know is a natural hair brush, and these pigments might be a little rough on it, so maybe I should use, I'm gonna use my older ESUM brush. Okay, I think this will be successful in, yes, laying down the product, but also blending it through the crease. And we are wiggling back and forth. If you do this, you could get something on the brush, but you will most likely be a little more successful in going back and forth. And this is what we get. Now, I might have to prove myself wrong depending on, because I speculate this will be a good match for this texture. And for the most part, we got some here on the lid. I might have to go in with my other brush, but I think if I take my time in applying the shade on my lid, and then I turn the brush on its side to work it through my crease, pull it a little bit beyond the lash line here, and take more on the tip of the brush now, and pull it under my lash line. You don't have to do this step if you feel you have smaller eyes and placing shadow under the lash line closes them up too much for your liking. Then please choose what you think fit for your eye shape and whatnot. I love a lower lash line smoke, so that's how I like to go, you know what I mean? And see how I'm using the brush to just gently whip the edges so it can fall naturally into that gradient. And look, you're done. And you see how it's not in your face. And granted, this is not one of the more, for instance, if I went on the blue side, that will appear more vibrant, a little bit out of the neutral norm. You're like, but listen, I want to use as many shades as possible. What you can do, and this is example 1, right? We just used 1 shade all over the lid. Look how beautiful that is. It's shiny and the duochrome stuff. Let's go in with one of the defining neutral shades. And for this, definitely using my Rephr concealer brush, because I want to cover not only my lid, but the crease. And for that, I think I'll go in with chiseled, because I don't want so much color that it looks smoky from the backdrop. I just need something to influence the blue shade to not look so blue. So I'm placing chiseled all over the lid, and you see that it takes on more of a taupe tone on my skin tone. I'm keeping it mainly on the lid, and if I need more, if I change my mind rather, I'll place more under the lash line. So let's go here with the blues, right? And you're like, I don't know, man, there's a lot going on. Hear me out. If you just wanted to keep this soft, okay, I would just go in with fingers. And I went on and on about tools, right, at the beginning. Danessa was deliberate about formulating a shadow that was finger forward, easy to pick up, where if you don't have tools, you most certainly can just use your fingers, which I have demonstrated here or will too. And I think that's the most important advantage to remember, that even if you don't have the right tools, you can just use your finger to tap on the shadow, which ultimately will give you the best laydown. It might not be great for precision, right? Maybe you have longer nails, maybe you just don't like using fingers. So I think it's important for me to outline as many options as possible, hypothetical situations that you might run into. But you see how applying the taupe first just dial down the intensity a little bit, but it's pretty there on the lid. And although it's blue, I don't think it that so in your face that you can't wear this on the daily, you know what I mean? Personally, I would place the same color under the lash line. For me, I think it pulls the look together because again, that's how I like my shadow to appear, but you most certainly can choose to just have the blue on the lid. Now, in my opinion, this is where it gets tricky, right? You could use your finger to place a highlight of some sort on the inner corner, but it could get a little messy. And I think it wise to use a smaller brush for that task. Hopping over to the first eye and wanted to demonstrate how easy it is to rely on any of these lighter shades to be placed as a highlighter. And you can actually, which I think more of an avant-garde approach, if I may, you could just place this color on the inner corner and that's it. You don't have to place anything on the lid, through the crease, under the lash line. You could just use that as your accent. Maybe apply one of the velvet pomades from Defining Neutrals if you have it on the lid just to kind of present a cleaner canvas. Liner, lashes, and you're done. Just wanted to put that out there because I actually like that look a ton. I think it's so pretty to have like this sparkling wash of dazzle emerging from your inner corner and having the actual lid and the rest of the eye appear bare. I think that's pretty. And now for this side, we can use what I think just fabulous to have here are these halo multi-chromes. I think this one specifically is called something else, but it's more translucent where you see the flip, but the base is not heavy, right? You can place this on top of the shadow we already have on the lid, or as I'm about to do now, placing that on the inner corner and then overlapping it with the first shade I applied. I'll also take a little bit with my finger here and just tap on the center, and you see the transformative effects that placement has, right? It brings forward a little more of a warmer cerulean blue versus keeping it more periwinkle. Okay, so we have the shadows on. Let's apply some lashes and I'll be right back. And here are the looks from round one. Hopefully the intro to these demos kind of lessened your apprehension in using Lightwork VI if there was any. I hope that these looks don't come out too powwow in your opinion. I actually think it quite nice to know you can use one shadow at a time and rely on its texture to create a naturally occurring gradient from lid to crease without needing another matte, without inviting another shadow. I wanted to experiment with what I had mentioned before in our round, where placing just more of an accent shade on the inner corner can be enough for the look, and I'll also experiment with other textures in here. At most, if you want to use two at a time, maybe one of the soft matte textures and then the multi-chromes on top. Hopefully that sounds like an idea. And with that said, I'll see you back here in a bit. Round number two. Ooh, do I need to apply more blush? I'm appearing a little uneven. I think by this time I have already, or maybe not, but I'm applying the new Suku Holiday blush from their Cozy Winter collection. Let's just say I die with apricot. I wanted to first demonstrate what I was describing during the first round, specifically on this eye, where you can take one of the more transforming shades that look white on screen, but they have a flip when applied on the skin. Like, let's say we wanted to go with this pink guy here, and you please use a brush appropriately sized for your eye shape and inner corner, right? I'm just using this guy because it's what I have on hand, and I'm just placing it here on the inner corner and then pulling the edges in toward the lid, but not necessarily carrying it out all the way through, just so it looks or appears like a scatter. And you can also place some here on the inner corner, and that's it, you're done. This is what I'm saying. Don't feel obliged to apply so much at once. You very much can just treat this palette as an accent palette, as whatever, right? Maybe one day you apply 3 different finishes at once, and the next you just apply one on the inner corner. I think this is a great way to go, because I know it's tough to see here. The lighting, my apologies, is absolutely horrid in this video. It's cloudy outside, but it's still not light enough. I need a little more. Too many clouds. If I had just a little more sunlight, it would have been perfect. But anyway, I think you get the picture, right? You can just apply maybe a liner, black coffee, lashes, mascara, and that's about it. Or, like I had said, you can place something more nude-ish on the entire lid, or you can take that same color but place it on the lid and have that as the second accent going on the eye. You have the lid, you have the inner corner. If you want to have something on your lid but don't necessarily need it to encompass it completely, then you can go this route. Just fingertip tap and you're done. Now, I wanted to hop and apply the more terracotta soft matte and maybe go in with like the pinks, because when you apply these guys, it's like intense, right? Well, depending on the opacity and the amount of product you choose to apply on your lid. What I want to do is just start with this color here, and what I swatched earlier. This is what we're going in. I like to first start by placing some on the outer corner. I like to set up the bracket first and then take the edges of that shade on the outer part of my crease and then work the remainder of the shadow through mid and inner part of the crease, right? I think that's the best way to go. This is more of an overarching technique I think you can use for mattes of whatever kind, from Natasha, Vizier, Pat, Danessa, to have the majority of the color be placed here instead of on the middle, as that will allow more control with how well the shadow diffuses through the crease. You could keep it here, but you know, if it's your first time joining me, I do love a hazy lower lash line. So I'm carefully pulling some shadow here, first on the outer quarter and then taking the rest for the inner, right? Because I like that for it to be a little more complete. And look at that, that's nice. Now placing that same color on the side of the brush and covering a little bit of the lid, because I want this to be the backdrop, and then inviting one of these flip duochrome shades, right? This is like a pink flip, and I just wanted to see, because I haven't done this, so this is like live experimentation. I just wanted to see how it will appear if the pink is placed on more of like the red tone, and I think that's nice, right? You don't necessarily have to keep the pinks with the violets and the reds with the oranges and the greens, right? I think it nice to kind of dabble. But another characteristic of these shadows that I think noteworthy is their ability to be layered and not appear heavy on the lids. And to demonstrate that, we already have the more terracotta tone satin something on the lid. How about we go in with just a little dusting? And for this, I will go in with a more traditionally constructed blender brush, taking some of this magenta, okay, and then placing this color over the terracotta and seeing how that will influence maybe the overall look, and maybe something to consider, right, doing if you wanted to go in with the terracotta first and then follow up with the magenta if you needed more of an outline. But that's pretty. I think it steered it to be a little more warmish, like warmish magenta, okay? I'm just tapping a little more of that shiny shade that we applied on the lid, and why not following up with inner corner, but you know what? Hold on. You already saw this guy in action with the highlight effect. I need to go in with this glass sheen. The glass sheen formula is by far my most favorite out of all. I know it doesn't have duochrome or multichrome effects, but my goodness, the shine on this shadow is just ridiculous. And I would like to place this now on the inner corner for highlight here, because I think it quite nice to have this contrast between cool and warm, where the warm is dominating most of my eye, and then all of a sudden you got this icy serving of lavender. I like what's happening. Let's put a little more here on the inner lower lash line. Oh, that's pretty. That's nice. I don't know if I've done this before in my other demonstrations, my other demos, but I'm liking how this is turning out. I'm placing a little more of that hot pink here on the inner lid just to clean up this transition. Okay, and I think we're done. All right, let's apply some lashes and I'll be right back. And here is round 2, and I wanted to also show that I dove into defining neutrals, picked up a little bit of tourmaline just to accent my lash line here and create a little wing, and I actually layered some of the fix and shape powder on top to increase the intensity of the black color, and also to make sure it holds long if you were going to wear this for a long duration of the day. And I love how both looks turned out, especially the accent eye here that I started off the demo with, just to demonstrate how impactful these finishes are, and that you don't necessarily have to place these types of multi-chromes on the entire lid. You can just use them as highlight accents, as color accents, because not only will they bring the color, but they're bringing the shine, they're bringing the reflectivity, they're bringing a flip. There's a lot going on, and that definitely draws attention to that part of your eye. And again, I think a unique take on an eye look that doesn't necessarily have color on the lid or through the crease. And here I showed how the satin soft mattes layer successfully if you needed to steer the color in one direction or the other, how I started off with that terracotta shade and then I layered on the magenta one. So it didn't look super pink, but pink enough, especially since we applied that pink flip duochrome on the lid. And the glass sheen, listen, this icy lavender shade is my favorite. It's my favorite. Hypothetically, you can apply the glass sheen all over the lid and then maybe apply one of these flip halo pink shades on the center and have a little bit of like that pink neon haze come from the center of your lid, and the rest just have that icy lavender glow. The ideas are endless, and I'm sorry that I have to stop the video here because I gotta cook dinner. Let me know if you wanted to share your ideas down below. If you already have Lightwork 6, you've been dabbling and experimenting and want to share what you have ran into when applying these shadows. If you're still thinking about it, if you're skipping it, I would love to know down below. But most and foremost, please like this video, especially if you made it this far. Thank you for watching the entire thing. Maybe consider subscribing. I love diving back into eyeshadow palettes and presenting different ways to use them for inspiring you in applying makeup that we already have, especially if it's an expensive palette like Lightwork 6. And you'll see more videos like those and others, so hopefully you consider subscribing. And with that said, I will see you on here again soon.